I'm actually a convert. I joined the church when I was in my early 20s. And so at this point, I'm in my early 40s. I've spent half of my life, in the Protestant church and half of my life in the Catholic church. And yeah, I just really love the church and especially the saints. I think the lives of the saints have a lot to teach us and really bring a lot to our faith.
So, do you mind if I ask what encouraged you to convert to the faith? Was there anything in particular, or what happened there?
I met a friend who was a convert actually, and that kind of started me asking some questions because my best friend growing up was Catholic, but growing up it had just been kind of like, well, she goes to this church and I go to this church, and we didn't talk about it. And then I met someone who had converted, and I was kind of like, wow, people convert? Why? And it just kind of led to this journey and a lot of discussions, reading the Catechism, reading Scott Hahn's books, and just kind of discovering the beauty of the church and joining the church.
That's wonderful.
So I was already familiar with the saints because, as I mentioned, my best friend growing up was Catholic, and I remember reading saint stories with her. She had, a series of, saint picture books, and so we'd read those, and then we'd, pretend to be different saints when we were playing games sometimes. So when I came into the church, I was already familiar with the saints. And another of the saints that I wanted to talk about today was Saint Margaret of Scotland. I also met her during university before becoming Catholic because during one of my history classes, we had to write a history paper. And I can't remember what the exact topic was, but I chose King Malcolm III of Scotland, who's my background is somewhat Scottish if you go far enough back. And I've always been interested in Scotland. And so I chose this obscure Scottish king who's rather an interesting figure. I kind of compare King Malcolm and Saint Margaret. They were husband and wife. Compare them to the king and queen in the Disney movie Brave. Queen Margaret was always a very interesting figure to me as this woman who came in and had a huge influence on King Malcolm and what Scotland became after that. And then, yeah, becoming Catholic, that just kind of deepened my interest in her.
And did she have children as well, or
Yes, they have 8 children, and one of her sons, David, is also a Catholic saint.
oh wow, I didn't know that. Oh,
Mhm.
incredible. So you that's amazing that you learned about the saints before converting even.
And then when we were expecting my 4th daughter, we had always kind of played with different saint names for our kids, and so some of them are named for saints, and we often looked up their due dates, and nobody else had a really interesting, saint on their due date, but when I looked up, my 4th daughter's due date, it was St. Margaret of Scotland. And at this point, my oldest daughter had been born on her due date. My second daughter was born a week late. My third daughter was born 2 weeks late. And so when I was expecting my fourth, my midwives were kind of like, "Oh, she'll be late. It's just you go overdue." And her due date was St. Margaret's feast day. And so I just started asking St. Margaret. I said, "Please, please pray for my pregnancy. Please pray for my labor, and please pray that she arrives on her due date." And she arrived on her due date. So her middle name is Margaret.
The other saint that you mentioned when we were talking was Saint Joseph. Can you tell me about your connection with him?
So my connection to him is also a birthday. His feast day is my birthday.
Oh,
March 19th is his big feast day. And I have to say, just as a Catholic going through Lent, it's very handy to have a major saint's feast day as your birthday.
mhm.
Don't have to worry about fasting on that day. St. Joseph, and, trying to think back when I felt this connection to him. And I don't remember where it began, but it's been a long time. Just, yeah, learning about him and just feeling very drawn to him and to his story. One of the things that I guess drew me to Saint Joseph is the fact that he's very silent. I guess there are no words of his in the Bible, and I'm a writer. I do deal with words all the time, and yet we have nothing that Saint Joseph has spoken. He's very much a man of quiet action. But he was very much there for Mary and Jesus through everything that they went through, completely supported and loved them, and just, yeah, built this home for them and this safe space for them, and protected them from the dangers of the early world and from King Herod and from everything else that they were going through. And there's just something about his story and him as a father figure that I find just incredibly inspiring and touching.
You homeschool the all 5, don't
Yes.
you? Or okay, you do.
Um, I have homeschooled all 5. I have never homeschooled all 5 at the same time. So, my oldest went to kindergarten at a Catholic school.
Do you feel like with your the Koala Mom blog, you've kind of created a little community for yourself? I know that I've read it and I've seen so many interviews where you've connected different moms to all these people. Has that helped you in your motherhood as well?
Yes, that has been, um yeah, I really felt as, I look back on my early experience of motherhood with my first couple of daughters, and I just felt very isolated and alone. I was among the first of my friends to get married and the first of my friends to have a baby, and so I didn't have that community. And at the time I was writing the blog. I've been blogging for coming up on 20 years now. So I wrote about that a lot, and in some ways reached out to other moms online and started finding some community there. With for a long time I chatted with a mom in Australia. Actually, we had similar experiences of motherhood, and we would chat a lot, and to share whatever advice I've learned that maybe has made it a bit easier. And yeah, to bring up one more saint, I see that in Mary and Elizabeth is
Mm.
the relationship that they have. That and that God told Mary when he told her that she was going to have Jesus, he said, "Even your cousin is pregnant," and so basically connected her immediately to this family member, this friend who could support her and be there for her. And I think that's beautiful. That early in her pregnancy, she had another woman to walk through this with her. And I mean, I'm sure Joseph was there with her. We don't know if Joseph went to Elizabeth. He probably took her there or maybe stayed with her, maybe went back to Nazareth and then went back to get her later. But yeah, that she had this other woman figure to learn from, to be with during that time when she needed it so much. I think that's amazing. There's something else I really love about both the church and the saints is, over the last few years, I've also been learning about neurodiversity as I realized that a couple of my kids have ADHD,
Mm.
and one of them has very high sensory needs. So, in learning about his sensory needs, I've been recognizing my own sensory needs. But then I also see in the church how the church, in so many ways, nurtures our faith in a very kind of hands-on, physical, sensory way. There's so much in the church, like in the mass, where we see, we hear, we smell, we taste. It just engages all of our senses. And so I think artwork, and the church's tradition of artwork, and particularly artwork of the saints, can just really draw us in. And we can really use, paintings like this or artwork in churches to deepen our devotion to saints. Our church has a lot of stained glass windows, and so we spend a lot of time, before mass starts, we sit and look around the church and talk about the windows or the statues of the saints, and why does Saint Joseph hold lilies, or why does Saint Joseph hold carpenter's tools, or baby Jesus, or some of the other stained glass windows. And okay, can you guess who that saint is because of this part or that part? And so I think just that ability to see, and to like the images help us remember, help us connect with different parts of the saint. Both my father and my first husband were not healthy people who treated me badly, and I've been working through that. My first husband and I divorced, were separated 4 years ago, and so there's been a lot of growth and healing in then and since then, and kind of leaning on Saint Joseph has been helpful to, yeah, to have a father figure that I can look to, and to sort of help release the pain of my relationship with my own dad, and to turn to God as a father and Saint Joseph as a father, and to take a new look at fatherhood and to see it as this good, caring, loving. These that Saint Joseph is that sort of figure. He is what a father should be, and to, yeah, like I said, let go of some of the hurt in my own life around fatherhood and men who weren't there for me when I needed them.
And do you see your own children kind of leaning towards that as well? Have they been able to follow your example in that, or is that something that you think will come later? Are they still a little too young?
Really appreciate the appreciation because, yeah, I mean, a lot of time you're an online content creator too, so I know a lot of time it seems like we put it out there, and there's much less feedback now than there was a decade or 20 years ago. A lot of us, we just read content, and we don't comment or leave feedback. So it does help to hear feedback. And I very much approach it with, my intention is, find what works for you. And so it's here, I'm sharing some of the things that have worked for me, I invite other people to share what's worked for them. But I think, motherhood is a journey where we have to figure out, where our community is and where our supports are and what's going to work for us. And it might look different for all of us, or it might look different in different seasons with different kids, because even each of our kids is unique and bring their own little mix to this, journey of motherhood.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, for sharing your perspectives on those saints and for coming on today. And also, this is long overdue. Thank you, but you are the first person who interviewed me when I started my shop 5 years ago. So that was like my first official interview. Was the one you were generous enough to give to me, and I remember I felt like such a big deal when it came out. So thank you for that. It was a boost of self confidence that I needed.
Oh, wow, that's so fun. I do love interviewing other moms and just kind of, yeah, lifting up others and saying, there are so many amazing creative women, who are spreading the faith, and each of us, with our own little gifts and talents, and just, yeah, just spreading God's love and the faith to other people. And I think that's amazing.